Well, welcome to Midweek Life. My name is Josh, your host. We are in a series on grief. We're talking about grief because grief is hard and it's important to just look at and to process through and to talk about pain and suffering and trauma. And so this is our fourth installment from our series on grief. And today I have with me DeAngelo. Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely.
Basketball player.
Yes.
Lakers fan.
Yes.
So we share that in common. We're going to talk about grief. You have a story. Share with us your story of when you experienced grief in your life.
Initially, like I was telling you, it was more of I was playing sports in my senior year. And
High school.
Mm-hmm. And basketball was my life. That's how I dealt with everything. Any anger, or I could just go out to the court and just be free. And I was talented, I think. And the last game that I ever played, I hit a 3-point shot to win the game. And so it was my senior year. I just hit this shot. I was riding this high. We celebrated. And then because of a confrontation that I had with another individual, with liquor involved, police came. So 4 of the 5 starters got kicked off the team. So being my senior year, being everything I loved was basketball, I think that was the first time I felt shame, I felt guilt, felt pain. And so I started dabbling in liquor to try to, because when I would drink, I had this, what they used to call liquor, adrenaline or whatever. I felt confident. I felt like nothing bothers me. Mm-hmm. So that started it for me. So fast forwarding, I now have a few children, married, still drinking. And then with that drinking came a couple OWIs. Because of the issues I would have with liquor, we decided that we should stop drinking. Me being myself and my ex, and started attending church. And I was good for a while, really good. But then there's times that I would go out with my friends, who most of them were single, and drink and made some huge mistakes, like adultery, more than once. So after being forgiven once or twice,
By your wife?
By my wife. This one time I came home from work. I was a finance manager in Quincy, Illinois. It's about 45 minutes drive home. And she was packing up leaving. And it didn't seem real to me. That's where that denial comes in. But she never came back. So prior to my wife leaving, there was a guy, like a salesman, that I would minister to. And he was going through a divorce. And I seen firsthand how he lost weight, how he struggled. And I prayed with him in the office and got him a Bible, introduced him to Christ. And that was 2 months before I was now in that situation myself. So I know one of the things that he did that I'm thankful for that I did, which is seek help. I went to a doctor, literally, because it was a pain that it wouldn't go away.
Like a therapist?
Yeah. No. A doctor to get some medication to try to help me with this pain that was internal that wasn't working. I probably should have seen a therapist, but I didn't. So I tried that, and it helped a little bit, but not enough. Like I still felt it. It was
deep.
It was deep. Is when I go to sleep. Is when I wake up. It got to
and this was the shame you were feeling from your wife leaving you.
Yeah. And it was, we didn't have a perfect relationship, of course, but it was me that committed this adultery. This is something that I did. It was me that got in that confrontation that got me kicked off the team. It was me that was driving the car that I ended up getting those OWIs. It was me that got in some assaults and had to go to jail. So it was just the weight of all the things that I do and did. So a month after she left, I went into work one day, and it was just after actually I went on a long weekend vacation with my kids. Took them to what was it called? Not Branson, Wisconsin Dells, sorry. And spent a lot of money, enjoyed ourselves. I got back on that Monday, went to work. My boss sat me down and said that they had to let me go because they were downsizing. So then, of course, I'm just scared, don't know what to do. Everything is happening so fast. It's my fault. So after that, it's like I got closer to church just because I needed help. I was at my rock bottom. And because I have children.
Well, it wasn't quite rock bottom.
That at that point I thought was rock bottom. Right. So, I just thought that I can't just drink this way because I got kids. Thank God for my kids because it made me seek something besides something trying to mask it with liquor. So I got more involved in church, and occasionally I still would slip up and drink and then drink too much. And one night I came home, turned on the grease, didn't even put the French fries in, went to the back bedroom and went to bed.
Passed out?
Passed out. And I never went to bed without TV on or something, which is kind of good. I didn't have anything else on to mask the alarm system that went off, which was the smoke detector that's in the far back of the house because
the only one with the battery in it.
The only one with the battery in it. So, I fought the fire, put it out to the best of my ability. Called my mom, couldn't call the police, call anybody because I was scared. I didn't want to go to jail. I don't know why I would think I would go to jail, but I did at that time. Went back the next day to try to clean up this mess that I made and realized that I couldn't. It was a disaster. So when I came back that Monday, I went back into the house, and by that Friday, we had a flood in my basement. So all my belongings I took from upstairs because of the fire down to the basement now is ruined. So that was my rock bottom for the third rock bottom. So
who did you have after that marker moment in your life when your wife left? Who did you have in your life for support as you were grieving?
Thank you. It was my uncle, who was Pastor Tyrone Say in Kilkakaiwa, and his wife is a pastor as well, Sharon. They just loved on me. They didn't grill me. I felt comfortable talking to them.
Because it was a unique situation. You experienced some trauma and some shame, but there was that dynamic of it being self-inflicted.
Yes.
And so that can be, people may respond differently to that. But you're saying that your aunt and uncle were pretty solid.
Oh, yeah. They were solid. And it was just, they were basically doing what Jesus would do. And meet me right in the middle without me feeling like, a lot of times it wasn't even about talking about the decisions I did. The decisions that I made.
Yeah.
It was more of just, okay, this is where we're at. Okay, where are we going to go from now? What are we going to do about this? And it was more of that than, trying to solve it for me and I've learned through grief, it's a process too. It's not something that you can take some pills and it go away. It's not that I don't know. I didn't go to the therapist. So maybe that could be differently. But from my experience and experiences I've heard about, time really, it does take some time. And what's important is also what you do with that time and the people that you have around you.
Yeah. You mentioned before we were talking about how for the longest time you thought your kids didn't even know that you were drinking.
Yes.
But then you said something about your daughter.
Yes.
How one of her prayers.
Yes. My oldest daughter, she said to me that she used to pray to God that her dad would meet Jesus. And I thought I did a great job of, I didn't drink when they was in front of me. I thought, I'd make sure I'd clean the house up before they came. But she said that she could tell, and she knew that I was struggling. And I didn't know that, man, until years later.
What would be your advice to those who are in a marriage and have made mistakes, whether it's infidelity, adultery, or maybe like physical abuse, verbal abuse, and shame? So much shame is involved. What would be your advice to those of us?
Number one is the love of God. You can repent. I mean, just think about the Bible that we read. I mean, look at the stories. Look at the crazy stuff that's in the Bible, that he forgave them. He forgave Paul. So I think that the weight of the things that we do, which is wrong, that too often we feel like, okay, I messed up too bad.
It's unforgivable.
It's unforgivable. It starts there with God. I really believe it starts with God. And then, of course, if that is trying to make it right with your wife, being open, being transparent, and prayerfully it works out. But even if it doesn't work out, there's hope. As long as you are alive and as long as you're breathing, there's hope. And from my situation, like the Bible says, there was joy after that grief. I went through that grief. It didn't turn out the way that I prayed for. It didn't turn out the way that I wish it would have happened then. But now, man, there's joy. Now I'm thankful for where I'm at. I'm thankful for my wife. I'm thankful for my children. So I couldn't see that then. Mm-hmm. So whoever's listening or in that spot, just know that God sees. God knows your heart. And as long as you're trying, as all things work to the good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. So what that means to me is if my heart is in the right place and I'm stepping out trying to serve God the best of my ability, but I make a wrong decision, not meaning a wrong decision as far as sinning, but just, for example, the job, taking a step out into Waterloo. That's a hard question. Okay, God, should I do that? Sacrifice this? Sacrifice seeing my kids every week? To now every other weekend until I get on my feet? But that was my heart, and to serve God the way I was. So that's what I would say to them. And seek help. That's key. Sometimes,
Therapy.
Yeah, therapy.
Pastor
groups, friends. And even if you, at least just be around people.
So what would be your advice to those of us who maybe aren't grieving, but we want to be able to have the tools to sit with someone who has experienced some deep pain?
I would try to mirror what my pastor did for me, which was just be there for him. Sometimes, we always want to say, how are you doing? Most people respond, well, okay, even if they're not, so picking, it's not about asking them how they're doing. Just be around them and just be patient with them. And a lot of times people don't want to give you their whole story. They just want somebody to be there with them, so I really think that for me went a long ways, that I'll never forget that.
That's good. And then how about for those of us who are currently sad, dealing with loss, pain, and are currently grieving? What would be, maybe they've had similar situations, divorce or loss of a job because of COVID or something. So maybe losing their house or whatever, could be pretty similar situations. What would be your advice to those of us who are experiencing that?
Number one, every situation is different. I don't think there's a perfect way for everybody because everybody experiences different levels of grief, different levels of pain. So I would say to them, number one, go to God. He designed you. He knows you in and out. Seek God like you've never had before. And I really think he'll put people in the right places. And us, of those who are called servants, what happens is a lot of people pray to God for help. right? And then what we do as servants are supposed to serve how God tells us to serve. So it could take us being that middleman to now this person's praying. Now you happen to call them because you care about your group members. You care about your friends. Maybe not even know anything's going on. You're not going to know unless you check on them. You're not going to know unless you make that call. But with COVID, a lot of people are isolated at home. They're not going out. You're not getting with your friends as often as you used to. So sometimes it just takes a phone call. And if you don't thinking about somebody, then you won't call somebody. And it's easy for us to get caught in what's going on. And that's what's been happening to me until you reached out to me and asked me if I would do this.
That amazing coffee we get to drink every Sunday morning, is that from your place?
That's Dunn Brothers Coffee, would you say?
Dunn Brothers Coffee. Shout
Yes,
out.
sir.
Dunn Brothers.
Yes, sir.
In North Liberty?
It's actually Coralville, but
Is
it's best of both worlds. So it's right there on the border.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank DeAngelo once again for joining me. Powerful story. We hope that it was helpful for those of you who are trying to sit with people who are grieving, and then also for those who are currently just sad and trying to get out of the funk. So, again, this is our series on grief, and we'll see you next time.